Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are very excited today to have our special guest, Tiffany Hobson from the magical McDougall solution. And I'm proof that it works. So I'm still going strong, losing weight even more again. I guess I'm off my plateau. And so I'm very excited to have you here today. And for those of you who are not familiar with Tiffany, I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany Hobson. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Dr. McDougall Health and Medical Center. I've been working there for over 24 years, and I do a lot with patient support and day-to-day operations of the business. And both myself and Cheryl are very happy that you're here with us. I have the comment section on, so if anybody would like to start asking questions, please feel free to do so. Cheryl, do you have any topics of conversation you wanted to talk about?
Um, I have been struggling with sleep, getting back on my sleep schedule since we've returned from our 4 hour time difference.
Right.
Um, and I've decided to just kind of roll with it.
Mhm.
But I was wondering if maybe you could talk to people, because I feel like a lot of people may not make that correlation between good sleep and good health.
Sleep is an important factor. Like when I've traveled throughout the world before, what I usually do before I leave is at least three, if not 4 or 5 days prior, I already adjust myself to the time zone I'm about to go into. And I know that coming back, it always depends on, are you losing time? Have you gained some extra time? But, really being aware of your sleep hygiene. Are you shutting off all electronic devices, at least 2 to 3 hours, if not longer, before you go to sleep? How are you reestablishing your patterns? Are you going out for walks? Little things like this can really help. Some people like the scents of lavender or other scents that relax them. Some people like to hear nature sounds, others classical music. So it's really kind of curtailed to you what relaxes you. And if you go to bed and you can't sleep, don't beat yourself up trying to go to sleep and not being able to go to sleep so your mind keeps going and going. What you really want to do is maybe just get up, read a book. If you have a treadmill, you might just want to go for a walk in your house, so you're not walking out late at night by yourself. Another thing to do if you're a meditative person, meditating is really good. Just remember that when you meditate, you're not supposed to be engaging your thoughts. You're supposed to be watching your thoughts as if you were watching a movie. So letting them kind of come, do their thing, and then they go away. And maybe you have 3 seconds of nothingness, or maybe you go right to another thought. Just really letting it kind of do and play out as it's going to by itself. Because the moment you start engaging your thoughts, or you start making lists about, oh, tomorrow I have to do this and this, it makes it more difficult to go to sleep. Yeah, dogs are horrible for sleep.
Right?
I can't go to sleep without them, but can't sleep with them. With that, I know different people do different things. Some people allow their dogs on the bed, others allow dogs like in a crate or in a dog bed, or having kind of them a little bit in the hallway so that you see them, you kind of give them like a kid a nice big hug and kiss before bed, but then you make them go to their bed. There are different ways to do that. I am not a classically trained dog trainer by any means. But I do know there are great dog trainers out there that have wonderful websites that can help you get this process underway so that you can have your sleep hygiene.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, cats can be just as disturbing. If they're young, they like to bounce on your head, and then they decide in the middle of the night that they're out of food, and then all of a sudden you get this tap 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 on the side of your face, and they're like, hello, can we eat now? And I'm like, dude, it's not time for you to eat yet. But I would not trade them for the world, though. They are so much fun. We do have a question from Jackie. Hello, Jackie. It's good to see you and want
Yes.
anti-venom. She says, hi, Tiffany. Could you
Hi.
talk about how easily we gain weight after menopause, and how hard is it to take the weight off? Or how hard it is to take the weight off? The struggle is real.
It can be for people. So, my first question, if you had come through the McDougall program and you were one of my patients, let's look at what you're eating. Because a lot of people, when they say that they gain weight at menopause, there's more than just one thing going on. Like your hormones are going crazy. So, you're dealing with that. Are you craving certain foods? And if you're craving a lot of salty foods, gaining weight from sodium is a real thing. Just remember good old basic biology, osmosis. You suck it in, it stays there for a bit before it dissipates out. Or are you going along that kind of fat, sweet area where you're getting into a lot of baked goods? So my first question is always, what are you eating? Because I do, in my experience, see that women who are going through the change, that are eating a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables, no added oils, they're not eating out all the time, that these are women that do very well. But it's the, people that will eat, let's say, really well 4 days a week, and then 3 days a week they're going out to eat. Whenever you go out to eat, you're battling three things: residual oil, residual butter, and a sodium bomb. And it literally is that quick where you can have a few meals out and your weight's back up. So a lot of times, like I've seen this as well. Let's say, and this tends to happen more to women than men. Women eat at home Sunday through Thursday, or Monday through Friday, and they start to trend down. And then they go out to eat for the weekend and it goes up and it goes down and it goes up. And literally before you know it, you are playing Wimbledon. You are going back and forth with your weight. You lose 3 pounds, you gain 1.5. You lose 2 pounds, you gain 0.75. I mean, and it's a very frustrating game. So Jackie, that's what I would first start with, is looking at what you're eating. And sometimes what we think we're eating and what we really are eating are two different things. So a really great eye opener is to write down everything you put in your mouth for a good 3 to 7 days. Because what you write down, what you're putting in your mouth, that is so pinnacle, because I don't think that a lot of people realize what they're always putting in their mouth. And so you said you don't eat much salt, sweets, or fatty foods. I don't sleep well, and I have some arthritis issues. So with arthritis, definitely you want to stay away from the dairy and the oil because they're very inflammatory. And as with sleep, looking at your sleep hygiene, how are you setting yourself up for sleep success? Are you a person that you think a lot before you go to sleep? Really trying to unwind and tame down that mind. It is different things for different people. Some people meditate. Other people, they like to read. Some people, they get on their treadmill. So, that those are things, like if you came through the McDougall program, we would be looking at those in depth to see, okay, what are the places that we can tweak?
Yeah, and it's crucial. Like, so on my Monday motivation show and stuff like that, for the past 2 weeks, we've been talking about like how my sleep has all been affected, and because my mind won't shut down is basically what's happening. And so after days of just trying to force myself to try to sleep and being miserable, what I finally started doing is just getting up and going to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I've just kind of adjusted my schedule because I have the ability to do that. So right now I'm functioning best in the late evening hours and early morning hours. My brain is functioning the best. I'm at my most creative. So I'm working on videos and things during that time. And then I'll get sleepy about, 4, 5 o'clock. And then I'll go to bed and sleep for 8 hours and then get up and do my thing.
Mhm.
And so for right now, I'm just kind of rolling with it because I feel fine and I'm actually being really productive by doing that. So sometimes I think if you have the ability to maybe shift things a little bit, maybe that could help too.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, you don't have to get 8 hours of sleep. Some people function amazing on five and a half, six. Other people, especially if you're pregnant, you might need nine or 10. Teenagers, younger children, they need more sleep usually. So, not having to think, oh, I have to sleep 8 hours. But if you're restless and you're in bed and you can't turn off your mind, you might as well get up, because for the hours of anguish you will put yourself through just to try to get asleep, you could go organize a closet downstairs. So always think about like having a list of things to do if I can't go to sleep. That's good as well.
Uh, Jackie says, unfortunately, when I get up and try to get something done, it just makes me more awake, and then I have to get up by 5 a.m. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that could be hard. Dr. McDougall would always talk about too, if you were somebody that went to college, finals, midterms, you're burning the midnight candle and you may or may not be getting sleep, and you're drinking lots of coffee to make sure that your papers are turned in on time. You've studied for those exams that are coming up, and you completely destroy your sleep schedule. And he would always suggest for people that were having issues of sleeping, like maybe not doing this during the Monday through Friday work week or whatever work week you have, but on days that you have off, trying to reset yourself. And if you go to our website, drmcdougall.com, in the search area, if you put sleep, I know a couple of Dr. McDougall's articles will show up, or you can always go into your favorite search engine, Dr. McDougall sleep. You can see what comes up. But he would talk about that, of just, staying up. Seeing kind of where you go, because sometimes we're so bent on, oh, I have to have 7 or 8 hours of sleep, that you really don't need it. You need less. So the more sleep you get, it ends up giving you like an insomnia effect. And now you can't sleep. So maybe read some of Dr. McDougall's articles, Jackie, and try out a few of those things and see how they work for you.
Yeah, I mean, like, I never was a person that was really like impacted that much by caffeine
Mhm.
until like the past 2 years. And now, like, if I have caffeine after like, I don't know, 11 o'clock in the morning, like it's gonna impact me that evening, and I know that. So I've been trying really hard to not do caffeine as much. I only do it now like almost as a treat because it just it doesn't do anything for me anymore except for just make me have a rough night. So yeah, I'm just kind of just like, don't need it. And I see Jackie says that she will go read those articles, but she does not do caffeine either. So, yep, read the articles and see what happens. Betsy has a question for you.
Okay.
Betsy
Hi, Betsy.
says, do you have any suggestions for long car trips, staying alert without constantly putting things in your mouth? I'm interested to see what you have to say about this one because I have struggled with this in the past as well.
Okay, well, car trips, I think you should always have good food with you in case you get hungry. So whether you have, baked potatoes, steamed potatoes, especially the creamer ones, easy to pop in your mouth if you're hungry to do that. Apples, carrots. You want to make it finger food friendly. That's number one. But you also don't want to be eating the whole car trip because you are seeing whatever it is that you're seeing. And especially for long stretches where the scenery seems to be the same thing over and over again, that you don't want to be bored and trying to stay awake and feeding yourself, because that's eating for sport. That's not eating because you're hungry. So, suggestions for car trips. I'm old school. If you like music or you like audiobooks, you want something that you're kind of engaged. Like for me, I don't do audiobooks in the car. I could sing a tune and be very alert, but if I'm really intrigued by a book, I'm going to want to pay more attention to it. And I prefer actually just holding an actual book and reading it myself. But music, some people really like to chew gum. Gum is great because it keeps your mouth kind of going. Water, sparkling water. I mean, you're just going to have possibly more restroom breaks than usual. But, I like, having ideas of conversations, you know, in the car if you're going with other people. If you're not, you're going to be on a long road trip by yourself. You can, if you have Bluetooth, you can call a friend, or you could really kind of hash out things that maybe you've been wanting to work out on, So having a list of, things you want to maybe organize at the house, how are you going to go do it? Sometimes just going through those motions are really good. The question I would have for you is, well, what are things that make you excited? Because things that make you excited will make you stay alert. So I would do a list of that first and then go from there.
Yeah, my parents always laugh. They're like, it takes you guys so long to get to Florida. Like, it takes you longer than any other people we know to get to our house. And you live closer than any of them. And it's like, because we know how we are. And
Mm-hmm.
if we get bored in the car, if we start, Kathy will occupy herself by working in the car while I'm driving. And sometimes we have that banter back and forth talking about work stuff and things like that. But at some point, she gets tired and she closes the computer, and then this kind of stuff starts, kind of thing where, and then she's kind of like fidgety, and then she's kind of like, I'm feeling kind of hungry, but it's more of a boredom hungry. It's not really we need to eat hungry. And so what we do is, and the reason it takes us so long is because we pack into our schedule stops. We have certain places that we always like to stop,
Right.
and we know that we're going to stop in this particular town and go to this particular place. And usually it's like, we like to go to TJ Maxx or Ross for sport, because different places have different stuff, and we like to just go look and see what's there. And so, same thing with home goods, especially around Halloween time. We'll like hit all the home goods we can. But we only take 30 minutes or so. It's a bathroom break, it's getting your mind occupied with something else, and usually we always find something that we talk about for the next like hour after we've gotten in the car, because we're like, oh my gosh, what about this, like this made me think about this, and then we talk about it. And then a couple hours, 2.5, 3 hours down the road, we'll stop again somewhere. And maybe this one's only like for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but we kind of have them built in.
Yeah.
So we know the places where we get the most bored. We've rode that road so many times that we know exactly, like, okay, in South Carolina, we're going to definitely stop here. In Georgia, Georgia, we're going to stop here. And then it's usually like Pool or someplace like that that's a little more populated. And then we'll stop again once we get into Florida, usually
Mm-hmm.
around Jacksonville. So we kind of have our spots of where we start to get bored, and we usually kind of break it up in like 3 hour things. And it works pretty good. And Joanne says, don't forget, you can stop at my house anytime. And every time we go past your exit, we're always like, it's too late or it's too early. And we're like, and we should have planned better. But we are definitely going to stop and see you one of these times on our way down there for sure. Let's
Yeah, and
see.
having topics of conversation already prepped. Like
Yeah.
whenever a road trip to one of our favorite places, we know how many counties over it is. We know how long it takes us. Sometimes it's more traffic, sometimes it's less traffic, and because we've been to these places or through these towns so often, we also look for different things like, oh, that restaurant's still there. That's fantastic. Or, ooh, they have blues, so we're always trying to like pick certain areas where, because we only stop maybe once for this particular road trip for a restroom break. Otherwise, we go all the way straight through. But we're always trying to look at, oh, is this business still there? Or, oh, that business isn't there anymore. And it also prompts, we're lucky. We have a almost 10 and a half year old. So we could talk about anything and everything under the sun. So sometimes it's literally like, oh, I don't know. Let me look on my phone and get you that answer. And, sometimes we have no cell coverage. So we talk about how we could, oh my God, not have cell coverage and survive because, it's like going back into the dark ages, things like that, but I think that sometimes just spontaneous conversations too can be some of the best ones as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times, like, I'll have things that, like, when Kathy's working on a book, like she is now, that in fact, that's why she's not here, guys, is she is working very hard on the Creamy 3 book. She has been nose to the grindstone for the past 2 weeks, trying to finish up some things. And she's finalizing that manuscript today and getting out to some of the people who are editors and things like that, and getting ready for announcements for you and things like that. What a lot of times I can't interrupt her to talk about things. So if we're like planning another trip or we're planning, what are we going to do when we get to mom and dad's about food? What are we going to do? All these things that, like, if I had my way, I would like say right before bedtime, hey, we should talk about Baba, but that will get me killed in this house. So I don't ever do that. But there are things that can wait that are perfect for a 10-hour car ride. And so we'll game plan on stuff. We'll talk about, things we think would be cool to show you guys from places we're going. We'll talk about wish list stuff of places we would like to go. We'll talk about, just work planning kind of stuff. And a lot of times, like, we talk more in the car than we do when we're actually at the house. It's kind of fun. I like it. And sometimes Kathy will be like, yeah, because you have a captive audience. Now you want to talk my ear off. But she's just as bad when she gets going. So, but yeah, having somebody to talk to is always a real help. And if I didn't have Kathy in the car with me, I would definitely call somebody, I think.
Absolutely. Or this is a time to make your own opera. I do that. I do. I will talk. And my daughter and I, we both do it together. We'll start talking and then we break out in song as if we're like in a musical.
Did you ever watch Glee?
I never did. No.
Oh, because, like, at some point when your daughter gets older, like, you should watch that, because to me that's kind of like, they'll do something and then they'll break out in song, right? I mean, and I think, like, people always are like, oh, I don't want another musical, but it's like, isn't that life? Like, you, even if you don't physically sing, like, in some situations you've got some soundtrack going on in your head. Like when you're working out, you like hearing the Rocky song and you're just like, if somebody was recording the things going on in your head, it would be like a musical. Your life would be like a musical for most people, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, and you got to have different songs for different times of your life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. Let's see. You're welcome, Betsy. Any other questions from anybody?
Yeah,
or
come on.
You want us to talk about?
Talk about a captive audience. We have Tiffany at our disposal. You need to come on and ask her some stuff.
Exactly. And no, I have not seen Wicked. Have you?
I did. I actually went to the movie theater and saw it when it first came out. I'm a huge Wicked fan. One of my birthdays years ago, Kathy surprised me with tickets to Wicked at our local Deepak, which is like the traveling version of Wicked, was coming, and she surprised me with tickets that were like right down in front.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people are like, "Oh, you can't really see everything. You're too close to the stage there," and all this kind of. I was right. I mean, I could look down and see the orchestra pit, but
Nice.
I loved it because I also got to pay very close attention to all the workings and who was clicking on harnesses and not people not noticing, and who was like, there was all this stuff that these people are singing and dancing, but there were certain ones that they had a job.
Yeah.
They had to make sure, Glenda got up in the air safely, kind of thing. It was like, there was all these things like that. And I just, like, Kathy's like, did you even watch the musical? And I'm like, oh yeah, I saw all the stuff going on right there. And to me, that was amazing. That was so much fun. I really, really enjoyed that.
I saw the musical once, but I have not seen the film yet.
The
And now
film,
that I see that the new one's coming out November 21st, then it begs to ask, do I want to then wait so that I'm not having to wait forever for the sequel to come out?
it's it kind of, yeah. But
Because
I
I have to
was,
tell you, when they remade Dune, I was captivated. I mean, I
yeah,
remember Sting and Kyle MacLachlan in
yeah,
Dune from back in the day. That was such an all-star cast all the
yeah,
way around.
yeah,
And I thought, yes, I've read the book. I love Dune. I love Dune. And I was getting into it because it's like, oh, wow, they're actually picking up more from the book. Because after the Sting, Kyle MacLachlan Dune, then there was another Dune. And there's no, let me save you a lot of time. There was no reason at all to see that Dune. Sorry, but there wasn't. That was a lot of wasted time, energy, effort, and money to see Sting, or let's just go in with Timothy, But they were getting into such detail. And when it ended, like, I wasn't expecting credits. I was expecting it to go to like something different. And then it ended. And it was like, it ripped out my soul. It's like,
yeah.
Star Wars, don't do that to me. Can we just continue?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the new Wicked is actually, I thought they did a phenomenal job. It is that first one is long,
Mhm.
but I feel like they did a phenomenal job on the way they did it. And of course, the people that are in it, a lot of people were kind of like, at first were like, no, these two kids have studied those Broadway versions, and they keep a lot to the original, and then you want a spoiler?
I don't care, but the question is, anybody who's watching this, are
Yeah,
they going to?
it's true. I won't, but
You can
just,
give me the spoiler at the end.
okay, I'll give you the spoiler at the end, but
Because my
just,
husband refuses to watch it. He's seen
oh,
the previews and he's like, I'm not wasting my life. But if I see it and I tell him it's worth it, he will watch it. Because, I mean, and he didn't grow up with musicals. So when I took him to see Phantom of the Opera, I knew that was originally a stretch so long ago. And I just told him, I said, this is an experience, and if you don't like it, I won't drag you to another. But this was my introduction. If you like Phantom of the Opera, I know where we can go. If you don't, tell me what you don't like about it, and I know where we can go, or we won't. And he loved it. He was in absolute awe and shock. So because of it, I don't want to ruin musicals for him.
mm-hmm.
So, so I
Yeah,
told him, but
no,
he loves Wizard of Oz.
yeah,
He loves Auntie Mame. I mean, with Rosalind Russell. I mean, we like musicals. It's just it's like certain ballets.
mm-hmm.
Certain ballet. If you're really into dance and ballet, you can watch it all. But if you're like, I like the Nutcracker, but I'm not really sure about this one, then you know how to kind of curtail it for people so it's a good experience for them. They come away with it enriched in the arts, but you didn't ram something down their throat where they never want to see it again.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And
Betsy has a.
yeah,
Go
she
ahead.
does. I was just going to say, I think it was really well done, and I'm looking forward to the next part. So,
Yay.
Let's see. Betsy says, "What do you think about using creatine? That seems to be the new I need more protein thing I'm reading about."
Dr. McDougall wrote the Starch Solution book over a decade ago. There's an entire chapter when friends ask, where do you get your protein? The protein conversation is not a new one, but if you really took a step back and looked at advertising and marketing through food, through supplements and whatnot, you'll find that there's a very unique pattern. Now protein is back on and stronger than ever.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest there's a really great professor, and if memory serves correct, his name is Professor Christopher Gardner. He is a professor at Stanford University, and he has a great YouTube on everything you thought about protein that you knew is actually wrong. Just watch that. But what I always try to do, and I've seen this a lot because I remember when I was 18 and I started in pharmacy, and I am now much older than that, decades later. I can tell you when I first started that beta carotene was the vitamin everybody had to have. That was huge. Beta carotene, do you have your beta carotene? And then all of a sudden they stopped giving out beta carotene because they found out, oops, too much of it causes like cancer and does other things to you. And then all of a sudden it shifted. And now it was vitamin E. I mean, I remember working at a hospital. Every patient was given vitamin E. And I literally used to like fill these prescriptions and think, no, don't, please stop. And everybody was really into vitamin E. And then when was the last time you heard about vitamin E? Now it's vitamin D. And so when I take a step back, I am very critical of what is being promoted and why is it being promoted and who is making money off of it. And I really try to look at all of these different facets to come up. So, no, using creatine, no, I don't. I don't use any type of isolated protein in my system at all. That is really bad for you. I know that, whether you read Dr. Campbell's The China Study, or if you read some of Dr. McDougall's articles on, protein, which I highly recommend you do. There's a ton of information out there, whether you go to our website or again, your favorite search engine, Dr. McDougall protein, you'll read what he has to say about it. And what I've always respected about Dr. McDougall and Jeff Novick, our fantastic nutritionist, is at the end of all of their articles, they also footnote all the studies that they use. So you could go directly to the study and read for yourself. But what I would say is no on the creatine, you don't need more protein, and go check out Professor Christopher Gardner's talk on protein. It's an eye-opener. You're welcome, Betsy, sorry.
I feel like if you look at anything like in the store that's like maybe a processed meal or something like that, that's vegan, right? If you turn it over and look at it, I feel like every time I look at something, I see soy protein isolate.
Yes, don't do
everything. It's like they're putting it in everything, and I'm like, why? It's unnecessary.
Yeah, and I am not into food science, so I don't know specifically why they're doing it, with the exception of this being such a protein crazy time period right now. I mean, and I believe it's Google, but you could search trends. Like, go on. I think it's Google where you would, trends from the last 5 decades of protein, and you'll actually see like when it's at its height and when it drops, and whatnot. So it's interesting to see it that we're just in a higher trend right now for it. And and everybody needs their protein, right? I mean, where are you getting your protein from? I even hear my mother-in-law say, oh yeah, you got to get your protein. And I clench my jaw and walk the other way. And my husband has trained me well to do that.
Just keep the peace. Don't say anything. Oh yeah, that's That's definitely. I feel like food trends or things like the protein and stuff like that, I feel are very similar to like fashion trends. They
Oh
get
yeah.
very trendy for a while and then they go away and then they come back again. And it's like I now have two pair of parachute pants that I just recently bought. I
Wow.
cannot tell you how incredibly happy I am that I have two pairs of parachute pants because they were my ultimate favorite thing to wear in the 80s. And I just love them, and they're making a comeback. Now, they're not
Mm,
as tight. Now, in the 80s, they were tight parachute pants,
right.
but now they're a little bit looser and they're kind of being geared towards more of like active apparel, but they're still parachute pants. It's that material. I am so happy, and I even got them in funky colors with bright trim. I mean, I'm ecstatic over that. Like, makes me so happy. Mary has a question for you.
Hi, Mary.
Is there a limit on potatoes or beans per day?
No, there's not. Just eat when you're hungry, stop when you're satiated, repeat as necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jackie says, it seems that sounds like many are taking their health info from TikTok. I worked in a health food store for 17 years. Everything ran its course and eventually came back around. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've never ever been on TikTok, so I have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mention the I just completely lost my train of thought. You were talking about something and I was going to talk about
What,
oh,
vitamin
marketing. The marketing.
marketing?
When you were talking about the marketing stuff, we've noticed around here that there's a lot of people who are like putting on menus and things like that plant based. Like everything's got plant based in front of it, but what they really mean is plant forward. It's not vegan most of the time, the stuff that they're eating, but they're being like, oh, we're plant forward because we have more vegetables on our plate than our piece of meat. Like, and then that's plant forward. If
Hmm.
you eat a lot of vegetables with your little piece of meat, that's not plant based. But they're trying to say they're plant based. And
Right.
so I think that becomes very confusing for people who are, coming to this for medical reasons and they're like, well, I'm plant-based because I'm coming to this to eat healthy and for medical reasons, and I'm not vegan because I'm not, I'm not doing this yet as a compassion thing. I'm doing this as a health thing, kind of thing. And
No,
like, how do you
exactly.
feel about all that?
Well, so I will be very honest. I am not vegan. I have leather seats in my car. So by definition, I've blown that out of the water. I don't mind having a little bit of honey in my tea, to be quite honest with you. But, am I eating meat and fish daily, yearly, every 5 years? No, I'm not. I eat this way. But I personally am the type of person, I don't like to label myself. I think that when sometimes we label ourselves, we put ourselves in a box, and then other people make their assumptions of how we are based on our labels. So I'm really big into letting my daughter know, be your own advocate. Don't be put in a box. Don't label yourself. You're bigger and more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in a health perspective, though, I changed the way I ate because my dad died at 55. And when I learned first from Dr. McDougall, did you know health has something to do with it, like what you eat? And I hadn't thought of it. I mean, like I was like, oh, you mean like the old Greek? And he's like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Food is thy medicine. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Besides that, no. He didn't say go read my book. He said, hey, you work in a hospital. You should read some of these medical articles. And that is what prompted me to like take a step back and realize, wow, milk does a body good. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Pork, the other white meat. I mean, like you've been brainwashed since you've been a kid. So it was a completely different step, and it was for me health. So when I'm looking at people's health, what you want to remember is anything you do better today than yesterday is a win. Anything you do better tomorrow than you did today is a win. So I'm always looking at, not everybody's going to jump on board and say, okay, I'm going to eat a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables, no oils, no fake vegan products, because I hate to break it to you, but the fake vegan meat, cheeses, and butters are worse for you than the actual animal products. So if we're not going that route, and somebody, even Dr. McDougall would always tell people, if you're going to give up one or the other, meat or dairy, but not both, he would always say, give up dairy. And I know that kills the vegetarians from back in the day. But but so for me, it's a health thing. And if I can get somebody to be healthier, no matter like even the most minute changes, and just going one baby step at a time, that's better than no steps. So that's where my focus is always, is what are your health goals and what are you initially willing to do? Because I'd have to tell you, there's like maybe out of all the patients I've seen, maybe somewhere between 2 to 5% learn this way of eating, change to this way of eating. That's it. It doesn't work like that in the real world, ever. Because it takes a lot for a person to have that drive and to not give in at this family function or at that wedding or at that graduation. There's a lot of different layers that go into it. So for me, when I have a patient that will say, well, I'm going to this event, I might be tempted for cake, then my answer is always going to be different. If you come to me and you have a major, remarkable cardiac background, I'm actually the person that's going to say, you might want to think about how many pieces of cake and other things you've had over your life to get you to the point where you're at in your health right now.
Mm-hmm.
If basically you change the way you ate, you're in perfect health, you're exactly where you want to be in weight, all of your labs look great, it's not going to float my boat, as long as you're not a person that you take a few bites of, cake or whatever it is, and then next week, that's all you're eating, and so again, you have to know yourself and know what type of person you are. Yeah. But for me, it always comes down to health. How can I help you obtain better health within the parameters that you're able to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, when it comes to like the car thing, like I think there are so many animal derived things in your car that you have no idea about. Tires have animal byproducts. There's just so much in your car. So, I mean, like if you have a car or a bicycle or anything with rubber tires, so Kathy always used to tell me before I became vegan that there's a spectrum and you have to decide where on that spectrum you want to be. And, and I kind of feel like I'm seated pretty squarely in the middle right now. And I feel like I have a happy balance of both things. And, like somebody mentioned that, it was one anti-venom says, I'm happy to label myself vegan as it's for the animals, but I consider myself a plant-based vegan. And that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. I'm kind of like, I have the compassion and the health combined in my world. And it's a happy balance and I like it. But that doesn't mean that I don't have a pair of leather shoes still somewhere in this house, that I may have a leather belt somewhere in this house. Over time, I try to get rid of some of that stuff. But, I still have some things because it hasn't been really that long for me. Like I've only been doing this now for, 6 years. So it's a lot to go from 50 years of having all that stuff to 6 years of not. So, but Kathy makes it a little easier because she'll remind me sometimes. In fact, she just bought me a new pair of Birkenstock sandals yesterday. They're the vegan leather ones. And I was so excited. I was like, oh, yay.
Yeah, and I just don't ever want anybody, and I tell this to my daughter all the time, you can't call me a hypocrite. I'll say it like it is. And I have a degree in rhetoric. So words mean a lot to me. So, like when my patients come to me and they go, well, I don't know if I could be vegan. And I'm like, well, vegan means to me no animal products. You don't eat them, you don't wear them, you don't use them, you don't want them in movies. I mean, like, we can go down an entire list of that. But although people that are here with us right now, most of them I would say are more plant based vegan. But if you look at other vegans, that's not always the case. I mean, Dr. McDougall would always joke you could be a vegan and eat your Oreos and have Coca Cola and be just as happy being a vegan. So it just depends. Again, where do you want your health? For me, I always want people to think about their health. I mean, the less animal products that you use, consume, and ingest is going to be healthier, not just for you, but the environment. But if I'm coming from somebody that just had a triple bypass, that has had meat, dairy, and eggs in their life every day, if I even utter the word vegan, that's not going to be a good start. All I want to do is to open them up, because unfortunately, that there are very gracious people in the world and there are very militant people in the world. And sometimes when somebody goes up against a militant person, it puts a very bad connotation in their head about it. So for me, it's like, okay, let's just descale this down a little bit. You like baked potatoes? We could still have baked potatoes, but we're not having it with butter or sour cream, and you could make plant-based versions of these that are healthier, overall, and for me, it's about where can I meet somebody on their health level? That's the most important.
Yeah. And I think too, like a lot of times when people go through your program, I think
Mhm.
they come there, a lot of folks, for health reasons. And
Yeah.
I would say probably the majority come through there for health reasons. And
Mhm.
after a while of doing this, they actually, everybody starts to come around to the compassion as well.
Mhm.
I think it's kind of a natural thing that as you're doing it, then you start going, as you're going away from animal products, then you start, the compassion part piece comes in, and then you're kind of doing both, right? You are the plant-based vegan at that point. And Jackie says, she says plant-based because the word vegan makes others angry. And I think that's, like you said, there are some people that when you come across them, um, they kind of are a little bit, I don't want to, I guess militant was a good word. They're just very like matter of fact, no exceptions, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I went with Kathy to a vegan food conference years ago. This was before I even thought about being vegan. And when we were going, she was like, that stays home, that stays home, that stays home. She said, you don't need to wear all that stuff. Just wear a pair of tennis shoes. And and she got me like one of those cloth belts. And, because
Right.
she didn't want somebody to come at me because I didn't know any better at the
Right.
time, and a lot of times that's what happens is people just don't really know any better. You don't think about your clothes, you don't think about your shoes and things like that. And then for some people, like they you know they're further on the spectrum of that than like other people. And I think, and that's just where you got to figure out where your spot is and know yourself, kind of thing. Jackie
Exactly.
says, I can't control everyone when we go out to eat with friends, go out or eat with friends. I choose the best options I can, but I never choose me. And I'm with you on that. That is kind of how I am now. Like when we're traveling, if we're someplace and I'll look at the menu, I will go for the absolute very best option I can and say, leave the cheese off, please. And 9 times out of 10, that gets me right where I need to be. So I'm with you on that. Jackie, that's completely. And when we're at my parents, like, I'm not going to sit there and drive it into my parents' heads at, 78 years old that they need to, change their entire life and everything they do. But slowly but surely, my parents have come around to doing some things on their own just because we've left stuff in their refrigerator. So my dad, we left almond milk in the
Nice.
refrigerator, and my dad, who never really liked milk anyhow, but he would drink it, he had some of that with his cereal. And he decided that that tasted better on his cereal than the actual milk did. And then when he went to the grocery store and he decided that it lasted longer as well and it was a better bang for his buck. So now my dad's cheapness makes him only drink almond milk.
That's
And I
hilarious.
think it's great. And Kathy was like, "Do you think we should give them like the Milky plant or something like that so they can make their own?" And I'm like, they won't go that far. They
Yeah.
won't go that far to make their own, but they have made that switch over to doing that. So that makes me really happy. Now, if we could just get my mom to eat wheat toast instead of white toast, we'll be on our way. But she's still like, my dad eats wheat toast religiously. My mom's just like, I just don't like it. It doesn't taste right. So I'm like, you're putting junk on it. You're putting strawberry jelly on it. How can you can't even taste anything once you put the strawberry jelly on it? But
Yeah.
no, she is. But we don't push them. When we go, we'll make something for us. And then usually that is the side dishes for them. And everybody's happy. And I think it's working out good. Beth says, hello, Beth. It's good to see you.
Hi, Beth.
Tiffany, I am so grateful for the year we spent together after the 12-day program and all that you taught me so that I can be one of the small percent who just eats this way for the long haul. And I think that's
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
great.
Beth
Absolutely.
says, I can't imagine ever going back. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, you're welcome. But that's the beauty about what I do, being able to help people realize that it's not as difficult as it seems, but any type of change initially, there's a little growing pain, and it's just kind of working through it and working through the issues that come up when you're trying to solidify a brand new positive habit in your life.
Yeah. I have to say that if if I didn't have you and Stacy in my life, I don't know that I could have survived when I lost my job
Yeah.
without gaining everything back, because all that I wanted to do was eat just crap during that whole entire time. And I had to just keep like, don't eat that. You've worked so hard. Don't eat that. And what I was doing actually at that point was putting up my fat picture. And like when I was at my heaviest, when I was like 300 pounds, maybe plus, and I would look at that and be like, is not worth it to go back to that, because
Yeah.
I I was miserable then. And so I just, you guys really kind of kept me by, you asked the right questions, you gave the right support. Like I mean, I felt like I can do this because I have all these people in my corner, kind of thing. And so I really appreciate you and Stacy too.
Oh, thank you so much. Well,
And
we
one,
love doing
go ahead. Sorry.
just love doing what we do.
I know. You guys do a good job at it.
Thank
One
you.
antivenom says, yes, I do use words plant-based before vegan when I am in a situation that might be taken hostile. They often ask if I am vegan. I think it is becoming more known, even if vegans are hated. Um, and and she did say, those people aren't my people. So yeah, and I do think vegan is starting to get a little bit, since there's a lot of people doing it for the environment now too, as well as the animals. I think
Yeah.
it's starting to get more where they don't just expect everybody to be mean.
Right. But I
And
mean, but let's look back to like what, the 60s and 70s, the word, in the 80s, the word vegetarian. Now, vegetarian, that was a whole different beast. Are you regular a vegetarian? Are you ovo-lacto vegetarian? There's so many different vegetarian varieties. I don't even remember them all, but, it had the same connotation initially. People would roll their eyes or, this or that. And then you have people jumping on, oh, and I can't have gluten. Now, for people that have celiac disease, I mean, there are some people that absolutely cannot have gluten at
Right.
all. And I'm so happy that there are kind of more options mainstream. But a
Hmm.
lot of people also jumped on the no gluten when it's not necessary that they need to not have gluten,
Yeah.
so it becomes, for somebody that opens up a restaurant, you have to look from their perspective.
Hmm.
What am I supposed to do? I had a set menu, I had a set vision, I train. I mean, let's face it, chefs don't go to nutrition school.
Right.
They go to culinary school. They're there
Right.
to learn about, fat, protein, how are things, meshing? How do you, bake a souffle? I mean, this is a whole different skill set. I don't know anything about baking at all.
Me neither.
But I love watching cooking shows because they're giving me, I mean, I don't need to have filet. I don't need to have, whatever that they're cooking. But what I like to see are the herbs that they're using with different vegetables. Because sometimes they do something
Right.
and it's like, I hadn't thought about, oh, what is it called? When you put your vegetables on parchment paper and you fold it over and then you put
Oh,
foil.
it's like they do with fish. What is?
Yeah,
There's a name for
parboiling
that.
or whatever. There's a name
Yeah.
for that. So if anybody remembers that, please let me know.
If Kathy was here,
But
she would know it.
right. But I remember I was watching that and I thought, oh, I'm going to do that on our grill outside, because the parchment paper helps from like having the aluminum on there. But it was like, oh, I forgot about that steaming process,
Mm.
and I could just throw in, because I grow herbs, cut some herbs and just throw them right on it. So I'm always looking at different things like that, and when I worked at a restaurant, when I was a server, when I was, decades ago, for, a side job, it was also sometimes difficult when, if a chef is set one way, and the sous chef that could do something isn't working that night, it throws, like, you're trying to make your people happy because servers want them happy because that's where they get their tips.
Yeah.
They're smart like that. But you have a chef that's unwilling to do something. Now you're in the middle, and it's a difficult place to be. So, I'm always looking at the what a restaurant, like if I'm going to go to one, I look at the entire menu. I mean, I've hated chicken since I was in preschool. And I can tell you right now, I'll still look in the chicken section because sometimes all of a sudden they have a rice pilaf. So I'll
Mhm.
call ahead and say, hey, how do you do that? Is it already pre-made? Because sometimes, like vegetables, if they've already have a big batch, but they already put it in oil just to throw it on and cook real quick, that's out of the picture. But you'd be amazed. I mean, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse is still one of my favorite steakhouses I love. And I know that's a difficult thing to be a vegan to walk into one, but I'm telling you, you could get a very healthy meal at a steakhouse. They
Yeah.
always have baked potatoes. They usually
Hmm.
have steamed rice. They have at least 4 different vegetable options to choose from. And when I go in there, I just kind of say, hey, I'm allergic to dairy. Oil makes me sick to my stomach. And then when I'm asked about the meat or fish, I have one of two different choices of answer. One is, I am so meat and fished out right now, I can't even look at them, which, I mean, they don't know who I am, right? They
Right.
don't know. I haven't been eating it for like years. Or I just look at them and go, I would love to have meat and fish, but I have a gag reflux. No restaurant wants you to have a gag reflux.
Right.
Once in a great while, I say that whole spiel, and people go, "Are you vegan?" And then I look at them and I go, "Oh, I didn't think of it like that. I guess I am, minus the oil, But
Yeah.
I want to take off that stigma,
Mhm.
for people. But Ruth Chris, a lot of people don't realize this, but most of the time they have a vegan style soup. So like when I order, I always order a sample first. And then I look to see is there an oil slick on top? If not, I do this with the cup. If there's not a really dark permanent ring, if I don't see anything or barely anything at all, I'll try a bite. I've had a great minestrone soup at Ruth Chris Steakhouse before, vegan.
Yeah.
Not oily. It was a very nice surprise, to be honest with you. But you just never know. So that's why I always try to go to places with an open mind.
Hmm. Yeah. And that technique you were talking about with the parchment paper and the vegetables,
Uh,
um, actually at Test Kitchen on a Virgin cruise,
uh,
that's one of the entrees for the vegan and
oh,
entree,
fantastic.
and it's really really good. And they even put like, well, the last time we had it, they even had like fiddlehead ferns and stuff in there.
Hmm.
It was just all these like really creative vegetables, and it was really yummy. That is a great technique.
Yeah.
Let's see. Beth says, it's awesome to see us both. And she said, what could be easier than eating potatoes unless you can't get them on a cruise ship? It's a little background on that. We were on a cruise together where we couldn't get a baked potato to save our life. They had French fries every day, but we couldn't get a baked potato. And it was interesting, to try to get a baked potato. And I think at one point, Beth and her gang actually like nailed down a chef and said, bring us baked potatoes. And I think they may have got baked potatoes one day on there. So I missed the baked potato day. I feel bad about that, but yeah, it was good times. Let's see. And Betsy says, I haven't gone through the program, but I sure know that these talks with Tiffany and Stacy have made a huge difference in my life. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet of you, Betsy.
And Mona's here. Good to see you, Mona.
Mona.
And one Annie Venom says, I was a vegetarian in the and worked in restaurants. I've been catching it all my life. Also, I'm celiac. So
Yeah,
that's hard.
yeah,
Yeesh.
that really is. But you
Yeah.
know what? I see Jackie's comment below. When you told someone you don't eat meat, they said, but you eat chicken and fish, right? Haven't you seen my big fat Greek wedding?
Yeah.
Vegetarian? I'll make you lamb. Yeah.
Yeah. It's we actually lived next door to this lovely lady when we lived in town further, and she would always invite us over to eat. We never really, we were always like, no, I'm sorry, we don't have time. And then after like her constantly asking, she was like, please let me make you a meal. And so we were like, okay, we'll come over for dinner. And I said, we're vegan. No meat, no dairy, no eggs, like no fish, anything like that. And she said, oh, that's fine. I've got this perfect chicken dish made for you guys. And I was like, oh, we can't eat chicken either. We don't have any kind of meat whatsoever. And she said, no meat at all? And I said, no meat at all. But, any vegetables you want to cook up, we'll be happy to eat them. And so then she had to like, okay. And then she said, let me have a few days to think about it. And then it just totally threw her off
Yeah.
that, we didn't eat chicken. So she actually came up with just like a nice spread of vegetables, and we were all happy. But I just thought it was interesting that everybody else has that same experience where people are like, but you'll eat chicken. And it's like,
Yeah.
the chicken's a meat. Like, I don't understand.
I don't know. I've never liked them. I went to a farm in preschool, and I remember walking into the chicken coop and thinking how gross and disgusting they were. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
So, to this day, when I'm invited somewhere and somebody says we're having chicken, I would love to, but we already have plans that day.
And Mona says that it's called papillote.
Yeah.
Papillote. It's a French thing. Yeah. Nice. Uh, and Jane says, I just say I order weird, but I tip well.
That's all you need to do,
That's
Jane.
exactly
That
right.
is all you need to do. Let them know. Smile, make a joke out of it.
Yep.
Let them know you tip well.
Mm-hmm.
They'll bend over backwards for you all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And one Annie Venom says, I have a gag reflex with the smell of meat. I'm embarrassed by it, so I find other ways to be social. It's so cool that you feel comfortable telling people.
Yeah, I don't, but I just say it because I also know that if there are really gross sounds coming from anywhere in a restaurant, nobody's going to want to eat.
Exactly.
It's kind of like when, so this is very unvegan friendly, but I used to have purebred Bengal cats. And so I would go to the meat counter about every 3 to 4 days, and I would get them ground turkey. And they had their own container, their own spot in my refrigerator, their own utensils. But I did this for them.
Right.
And I remember one of the gentlemen that always helped me said, well, you never order anything else. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just not into meat and fish. That's all I said. I didn't want to get into a conversation. And then he started going on and on and on. And he just thought, no, don't do it. Don't do it. And he kept going on and on and on. And I finally said, well, yeah, I don't really eat ribs. And he brought up ribs. I said, because as you can see, they're areas of aspiration. So what I basically did was I gave everybody at the meat counter an anatomy lesson from anatomy class that I could remember about where all the body parts are. And I related it to human body parts, not just where the animal is. I was like, oh, here, everybody walked away. I said, please don't ever do that again. And he never did.
Awesome.
But it's kind of like my daughter, I always tell her if she wants to try something and we go out, I will allow that. Just let me know ahead of time what you want to try, because I'm at least we're going to go out to a quality restaurant. So it's the best that it's going to be presented to you, because I'm not doing it. Right. But beforehand, when she wants to try something, I am that person that says, it's from this animal, and that in order to get that cut, they're going to have to kill it. I go into very extreme detail, because in the back of my mind, I think, if she turns around 16 one day and says, I'm vegan now, how dare you let me eat that? I can at least go, hey, I've always told you, But because the way that I interact with my daughter, and I'm very straightforward with her choices are pasta and tofu over anything else besides vegetables and fruit. I mean, she talks her friends out of eating at McDonald's. That's a personal win for me and for her, not necessarily for the parents of her friends.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's fantastic, and I feel like when I grew up, I was just, I wouldn't say sheltered, but I think we're all sheltered to a point about that kind of stuff, because when we would go to the grocery store, everything's in these little styrofoam packages with cellophane on top of them, and you don't really make the association, right? And I think once you actually make that association, I think that kind of some people, they make the association and they just don't care. But then I think a lot of people, they make the association and they kind of go, I'm not so sure about that, right? And
exactly.
So,
and that has actually stopped my daughter. If I've told her something, she kind of looks and goes, I gotta say, one of my best friends, man, she loves her oysters and whatnot. And my daughter once asked me, she was like, have you had one before in your life? And I said, yeah, I was 22 or something. I'm like, and I spat it out. And I said, and then I started learning about bicuspids and how they cycle through. And she was like, well, what's that? And I said, well, let's go read about it. It's amazing if you just open up a biology book, how that can change things. I mean, my daughter kind of looks and goes, that's pretty gross. I'm like, yep, let's not say anything. Let's be sweet. Let's be polite,
Yeah. I think educating yourself on things is always fantastic. And I think that I don't have kids, but I've been around a lot of kids, and I feel like they are sponges just waiting to soak up knowledge of stuff. So I think it's
Okay.
great. Beth says it was Holly in their group that worked out the potatoes with the chef on the cruise ship.
Nice.
So that's awesome. And Jackie said, I told a waitress I was lactose intolerant when I ordered a salad. Cheese wasn't listed in the ingredients, but she put cheese on it.
Because you need your protein.
Yeah. And Joanne says, I always have baked potatoes sitting in my fridge, quartered and thrown on the grill. Yeah.
Perfect.
A potato is like this magical food, right? Like it makes you full. I feel like I could probably live on just potatoes for, well, I shouldn't say just potatoes for a week, because I would have to have like my little kids mix veggies with it, my little corn, potatoes, and corn, green beans, and peas. I
You can
like.
live off. I mean, that's totally healthy. I love a bed of romaine lettuce, mashed potatoes on top, and then either gravy or enchilada sauce. I'm
Yeah,
done.
yeah,
I mean,
mashed
I
potatoes.
really love playing with flavors. I even have on the McDougall website a recipe of mine, which is Italian scallop potatoes,
Oh,
which I have
nice.
like the original style of scallop potatoes, but then I have the Italian. So it takes out all of the fat. I have an arrabbiata sauce with it. In the recipe, it does call for spinach, but here's an aside most people don't know. I'm not a big Spanish fan or spinach fan. So with that, my daughter and my husband like it. I make myself like put a little bit in there, but I'm more of a bell pepper girl. So, if I were going to make it just for myself, it would be bell peppers and no spinach. When I make it for my family, half of it has spinach on it, the other half does not.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jackie says now she just says, I don't eat anything with a face, a mother, or who poops. So it pretty covers them all, right? So I think that's probably pretty
No,
good.
you know what? Cheese is kind of one of those things. Like if I read that and I did not know, it might have a mother, but are you thinking about that when you look at the block of cheese?
Yes, I think some people don't associate cheese with dairy or cows.
Right.
I think that
Well,
there's
it's like,
this disconnect of for cheese. Like it's this different thing all on its own.
yeah.
And let's see, Jackie. Hello, Jackie. Good to see you here. Says she's really enjoying this. It's awesome.
Thank you. Glad you're here, Jackie.
Jackie, she's ready to give it to somebody. She says if someone gives her a hard time, she refers to their food as flesh or dead carcass.
Hey, I'm a very straightforward person. I have even said to people, hey, if you can eat that, you can be a cannibal. And that usually will turn people's heads, but it's like, so the Donner Party, I mean, what did they have to do?
Right.
Just
Yeah.
saying, area of aspiration is the same on humans as it is on an animal.
And red lentil, yellow lentil says, I just came on and heard cheese and salad and thought, how Midwestern. This happens to me when I go home to Minnesota, especially at Perkins. Yeah, cheese is, it is a mid. I don't know if it's strictly Midwestern anymore, but I grew up with every piece of lettuce that came on your plate had cheese just grated on top of it. And sometimes it felt like you had more cheese than you had lettuce. So
Yeah.
I get that. And Joanne says, I love veggies on a grill. The flavor shines. I do love grilled veggies. Oh,
Yeah.
so much. It just changes everything, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. And red lentil, yellow lentil says, also eating chocolate hummus as a frozen creamy dessert. That's
Does
nice.
not sound that, yeah, that's a stretch for me on that one.
Yeah. I don't know about chocolate hummus. I've tried it once before and I wasn't really a big, huge fan of it, but maybe I just got a bad one. Let's see. And one Venom says tofu doesn't scream. Kathy actually has a T-shirt that's kind of like. Um, do you remember there was like a scary movie and it was like no one can hear you scream in space?
Yes.
And I
Now,
think
which one?
it
Like, are
has a
you talking?
big broccoli and it looks like this scary like, and it's in this like dark kind of with the dark green and it's just this like huge broccoli, and then it says something like broccolis don't scream or something like that, or you can't hear a broccoli scream or something like that. I can't remember the exact words, but I remember she had that shirt. She got it at a veg fest. So now it kind of makes more sense to me because I didn't make that correlation for some reason with that shirt, but now I actually think it's a funny shirt. Before I was just like, oh, she's wearing the broccoli shirt. Jackie is in rural Texas. Cheese or meat is in most everything, even veggies.
Well, everything's bigger and better in Texas.
It's true. Uh, oh, I love this, Jackie. I actually like. I totally. I'm with you on this one because I worked with a lot of guys that were doing the paleo thing, and she said when paleo was popular, pointed out that they ate their own during famine and their average lifespan was 35.
When
That's
people
a
would come up to me knowing who I worked for and they'd say, I'm doing paleo, I would smile and say, I'm so happy you're off dairy. It's like, I'm not even going to get into a fight. At least you're off dairy.
right.
Right. And that would jar them more because they were coming, like waiting for me to say something. And then
Yeah,
I'm saying something positive. It throws them off all the time.
yeah. That's when the guys were doing that, they would always just kind of be like, I see you're vegan and I'm one upping you kind of thing. And I'm just like, I don't want I'm not a fighter. I don't want to get into an argument with you about food. I am not a nutritionist. I am not a chef. I am just a normal person who is trying to eat their lunch in this lunchroom with you. And I just like, I don't want to get into arguments about food.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I don't speak up when I should because I don't want to get an argument about food.
Right.
I see. Red lentil, yellow lentil said I was skeptical until I made it with leftover chocolate hummus, and I am telling you to ask Kathy to make her version for you. Just saying. Okay. Actually, I taste tested a pint last night. That's some kind of a like a chocolate pudding kind of flavor, and it was pretty tasty. And I only had a little bit, so I can have more for several more days out of that pint. Let's see. And one Andy Venom says, "At Jackie, that's hilarious. It has been shown that they ate more veg than anything." Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean they were basically like foragers. They had to get whatever nature provided them, basically, and
Yeah.
you know if they wanted to eat something that was meaty, like that was a production, that was a lot of work. Um, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
that was a rare thing for them to have, actually.
It
So
was because it takes a lot of energy to go and hunt down. I mean, let's take it back, buffalo. I mean, that's a lot. And
mm-hmm.
sorry to offend any of the vegans here, but I do remember my grandfather, when he would go hunting, he used every part of the animal. I would watch him skin it. He made us moccasins, and he would make hides. He would do different things with like the bones, but it was like every bit, if he hunted, he was going to respect the animal and use every bit of it. And what's funny is that when I go back and think about that set of my grandparents, they might have had meat or fish, but they didn't have it as often as they always had, like vegetables and starches.
Hmm.
So it's also interesting to see it's really only been since what, maybe the 50s, when we were coming out of the Depression, World War One and Two, where people were having bigger slices of meat or fish or having it more often. Because
Hmm.
before that time, people didn't have it as often as they do now. And there
Yeah.
definitely wasn't McDonald's and Taco Bell and
Right. And that you
all
could
that stuff.
conveniently just stay in your car and go through a drive-through and have food handed out a window to you. And I think
Cheryl, let's one up it. Now you could DoorDash it, right?
exactly. Yes, exactly. Now you don't even have to leave your home. You can just get on your phone and place an order, and all you have to do is get up to go answer the door. So, yeah. That is both a bad thing and a good thing, really, though. I see there's some good in it, especially like when we're traveling and we see that there's like a really nice restaurant that has some really nice healthy options, but we're like, we'll never get there in time. We can
Yeah.
always like order it and then the driver brings it before they close. And so that is, we've taken advantage of that several times. I think that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one Anti Venom is saying, Jackie said, women were the gatherers. How often did they find something to kill and no refrigerator? We were scavengers. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's true. And one Anti Venom says, no factory farms in the paleo days. I am learning so much.
Right. I don't know. Just keep on coming.
Yeah. And Jackie says, I have more respect for hunters who do as your grandfather. Killing to mount or stuff an animal is bad karma. Yeah, I think I agree with that. Like
Hmm.
my dad and his brothers would fish a lot. We lived on Lake Erie, and they would fish every weekend. But you know what? Whatever they caught, that's what we ate on Saturday and Sunday. All three families. That's
Yeah.
whatever they caught, that's what we ate.
I remember
Pro-
going fishing with my grandfather, and he was
yeah.
like, and this is how you clean a fish.
Mm-hmm.
Gutting a fish used to be my favorite thing because
Oh God.
it's amazing what you find in there. I mean, it's, more scientific thing, but
The
you know,
scientist in you comes out now.
oh, I have no idea. But yeah, but I think that's the difference. I mean, even my father-in-law, he goes out hunting, but he doesn't kill anything. He
Yeah.
literally is like, you know what? I've been there. I've done it. He goes more for the camaraderie. There's only one thing that he said if he saw it, he would kill it. But like my grandfather, he would the whole thing, like skin it, use every part of it. But every time he comes back from hunting, I mean, it's been 15 years, he still hasn't killed anything.
That's awesome. I
Man, I just go
actually
up. I'm like, what do you guys do besides drink beer? How do you
I
survive?
actually did a outdoor course. This was probably about 15 years ago or so. It was kind of like a sleepaway camp that me and a friend went to, and basically we dressed in camouflage. We went out at the before it was even light outside. We crawled around on the ground. We got our position, and then we took our cameras out and waited.
I love it.
It was amazing. It was a lot of fun. I highly recommend if you have anybody in your area that teaches like wildlife photography, do it because it's just fascinating. Like I learned so much doing that. It was very fun. And let's see, anybody else have any more questions for Tiffany? Because we are about to wrap it up so she can get back to work. One more question. Going once. Going twice. Three times. All right. We're gonna let Tiffany get back to work. When's the next McDougall session start?
July 11th through 22nd. Would
Do
love
you
to
have any
have you.
spots left, or are you sold out?
Yeah, oh, no, we do have some spots left. So absolutely. If you have any questions, you can always email me directly, Tiffany at drmcdougall.com, Tiffany at drmcdougall.com, and I'd be happy to help you.
Awesome. Well, all right, everyone. I was glad to see you here today. Next time we get together, hopefully Kathy will be completed with Creamy Book 3, and we will all be enjoying the concoctions that come out of that. And she will be back to host. So until then, you have me. Sorry. Uh,
Don't say
Tiffany.
that. You're fantastic, Cheryl.
Tiffany, as always, thank you so much for coming by and helping
Oh,
us to
thank
learn
you for.
more about our health and the good things that we need to keep on doing and the McDougall way. So, everyone, have a great day, and we'll see you another time.